This is part 2 of a 2-part series ranking my top 30 roller coasters I've ridden. Do note that this is not my finalized 2022 list, as I will be visiting 8 countries across Europe in the summer, but I have still ridden my fair share of new coasters and changed up a lot of my rankings since my last list in late 2021. At the end of this year, I plan on releasing a top 100 roller coasters I've ridden since I've been on so many new ones. This is simply a filler list for those of you who've been interested and waiting for an update. Now, I have ridden 457 roller coasters at the time of this video's recording. That means that every ride on this list is in the top 7% of coasters I've ridden. If your favorite coaster did not make this list, I likely just haven't ridden it yet, but if I have, it probably barely missed the cut. To be honest, every coaster in the upper half of my credits list is a very fun ride, but my top 30 truly is the best of the best. With that all out of the way, I'm proud to present part 2 of my top 30 roller coasters I've ridden, spots 15 to 1. Starting things off at number 15, I want to talk about a ride that was really ahead of its time. Maverick at Cedar Point is the coaster that can be most credited for breaking the coaster wars. This was a period of time where parks around the world were continuously building roller coasters taller and faster than their competition. But then Cedar Point decided to take a risk and build a 105-foot tall launch coaster, which was a big deal because this park was previously the biggest player in the coaster wars. Truth be told, Maverick turned out to be better than just about anyone anticipated. It does so much with its small size and packs in quality after quality. You've got quick transitions, some launches, a beyond vertical drop, even some fantastic airtime moments. Now in part 1, we highlighted many of Rocky Mountain Construction's coasters, but we're not holding back in this video either. Number 14 is Iron Rattler at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. It's true that this is a very short ride and that a lot of its speed is sapped on top of that quarry wall, but everything else I have to say about this ride is a positive. Every airtime moment is about as strong as they come, whether it's the initial drop or the iconic cliff dive. I also want to mention that after riding most of RMC's coasters, I've come to realize that much of the early ones are not as intense with less powerful airtime. But ironically, the one exception to that rule was the manufacturer's second coaster, Iron Rattler, which rides just as well as a lot of the newer RMCs today. A prime example of one of the newer ones is Twisted Timbers at King's Dominion, taking spot number 13. In 2018, when I first rode this, I enjoyed it quite a lot, but I did not remember it being so intense. After lots of rides in 2021, my thighs were left bruised and I had no regrets. Every hill delivers powerful ejector airtime, some moments of which are sustained and others are quick pops. But no matter what, they always come in a diverse range. This is evident with the trick track element, the little outer bank, and the triple camelback that is straight from a coaster enthusiast's dream. Now coming in at number 12 might be a surprisingly low placement for this coaster, considering many of you place it in your top 5s. Lightning Rod at Dollywood does many things well, but the speed at which it takes its first half is not nearly as fast as it used to be. Keep in mind, I only got to ride this for the first time last year, so my first impression of Lightning Rod was unfortunately slow Lightning Rod. If you're wondering why this is the case, they basically had to slow it down so that it would put less stress on the track, therefore improving the ride's reliability and longevity. I guess this is a fair trade-off because I'd rather ride slow Lightning Rod than no Lightning Rod. After all, the ride is still as high as 12 on this list, so it's still one of my favorite coasters. I find the terrain interaction to be some of the best on the planet, and the quad down is my favorite sequence of airtime on any coaster in the world. Even if Lightning Rod runs much slower nowadays, I still have great things to say about it. Next up, barely missing my top 10, is the absolutely insane X2 at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This still stands as one of the most intense and chaotic coaster experiences in the world. There's nothing quite like flipping down a 200-foot vertical drop anywhere else in North America. It's one of the most creative and demented concepts ever to be introduced, and it was a huge risk for Magic Mountain to build it. But I'm glad they went through with it, because while it did put a nail in the coffin for aerodynamics, it also became my favorite roller coaster in the state of California. Cracking my top 10 is a new addition since my previous top coasters list, this being Pantheon at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. If you were to ask where I thought this ride would place before I rode it, I would have guessed top 30, maybe top 25 at the most. But one ride on this masterpiece was enough to prove me wrong. Pantheon isn't just the best coaster at Busch Gardens, it's also one of the best launch coasters ever conceived. Every hill delivers ejector airtime ranging from quick pops to sustained blissfulness. In particular, that swing launch all the way to the Outer Bank Hill is one of the greatest sequences of elements on any coaster on the planet. I cannot say enough good things about Pantheon, and if you watched my latest vlog at the park, you know better than anyone else. Alright, these next 2 spots are going to be the most controversial rankings in my top 30, I'm sure of it. That said, I stand by their placements with full confidence. Number 9 is the world's tallest coaster, Kingda at Six Flags Great Adventure. Take a good look at this thing. It may have the stats on its side, but all it is a launch, top hat, and hill. That said, I promise you if you stick yourself in the front row, it is much more than that. As I said in part 1, speed is the most underrated aspect of a coaster for me, and nearly every ride pales in comparison to Kingda's sense of speed. This ride physically tries to rip your face off, and I am not kidding. The feeling is indescribable, but the fact that you get to experience it twice, once on the launch and again at the bottom of the drop, is amazing. Speaking of amazing, our number 8 spot is Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point. Contrary to popular opinion, this is my second favorite ride at the park. I could not believe how crazy this ride was when I first rode it in 2019. Take a look at my on-ride picture. If a ride can do that to my face, it's worthy of a high spot on my favorite coasters list. If you haven't noticed, Top Thrill Dragster is nearly identical to Kingda with some slight height and speed differences, but also with the inclusion of just lap bars instead of over-the-shoulder restraints. Imagine climbing 420 feet at your max and 120 miles per hour, and all you have is a lap bar and a seatbelt. The freedom you feel in this thing along with its sheer intensity makes it one of my favorite ride experiences of all time. Number 7 on my list is a ride that actually fell a few spots, not because it got any worse, but because I got an accurate opinion on it finally. El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure deserves all the hype it gets around the world. The beginning and ending sequence of elements is perfection. Every airtime moment and rapid fire transition is unlike any other wooden coaster on the planet. Therefore, it should come as no surprise that this is my favorite wood coaster I've ridden, and it's not all too close. The forces that this ride is capable of pulling relative to its ride material is one of the most impressive feats I've ever had the privilege of experiencing. That said, it was not enough to overtake my number 6 coaster, which just recently jumped ahead of this wooden behemoth. Number 6 is Velocicoaster at Islands of Adventure in Florida, which was a revolutionary ride from the perspective of theming. I don't think a coaster this thrilling has ever had so much storyline, animatronics, architecture, detailing, you name it. Best of all, it solos with just its layout. The first half winding in and around the Raptor paddock and the second half hauling the mill is a perfect contrast to one another. To be honest, Velocicoaster might be the most perfect roller coaster on this list. It just doesn't rank higher because I value thrills over everything else. That's why every ride in my top 5 has close to no theming but do have 10 out of 10 layouts that compensate. An example is number 5, Fury 325 at Carowinds. This is by far the best roller coaster Bollinger and Mabbeyard has ever built. It doesn't even ride like their other Giga coasters. I just feel like Fury is in a league of its own. That speed that you feel is absolutely insane, and it's maintained so well throughout the layout. Unlike other B&M Giga coasters, Fury 325 utilizes a low to the ground elements, and when it doesn't, it's probably giving you some sweet airtime. This ride only gets better as it warms up, and at its peak, it's one of the most memorable rides on the whole planet. Number 4 is what I'd consider to be the most polarizing coaster I've ridden, Skyrush at Hersheypark. You ask the average coaster enthusiast what they think of Skyrush, 5 out of 10 will tell you it sucks, and 5 out of 10 will tell you it's one of the best rides on the planet. I easily fall into the second criteria. What makes Skyrush so polarizing are the restraint system, which do get very tight on your lap, but they also allow you to set your body free, so it's a fair trade-off. That being said, I don't see how anyone could say anything bad about the layout. The first drop is one of the best on the planet due to its weird shaping, and the first 2 camelbacks give some of the most sustained ejector airtime in the world. There's also some jarring laterals that you can't brace for no matter what, and several quick transitions that throw your body around. Call me crazy, but I don't know if we'll ever see a day where Skyrush ranks outside of my top 10. One of the rides you've likely all been waiting for hits the number 3 spot, that being Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens, Tampa. More so than most coasters, I find this one incredibly difficult to rank. But after a lot of back and forth, I'm fairly confident in my decision because I've never ridden an RMC that runs this intense. Once Iron Gwazi is warmed up, every element delivers outrageous airtime positives, laterals, or multiple forces at once. The pacing is also insane. I don't think I've ever seen a coaster hit its brakes so fast, at least relative to its max speed. Even with all the waiting that we've had to sit through for this ride to open, it was worth every second. It really turned out to be one of the best coasters in the world, as we all hoped for. Now, number 2 might be a big surprise to many of you, but I think I'm going to give the spot to Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point. Objectively, this is the greatest roller coaster ever built. It has literally everything I could ask for from an airtime perspective, pacing perspective, diversity perspective, and really anything else. No ride throws you out of your seat more times, and it's not only quantity that reigns supreme, it's quality too. In my opinion, this ride has some of the strongest ejector airtime in the world, at least when the trims aren't hitting, which is literally every time I've ridden this ride. Nothing I could say about my rides on Steel Vengeance are dull. I just found that one coaster made me question my sanity a little bit more, so I had to place it a spot higher. That coaster is, of course, Intimidator 305 at King's Dominion. Not only was this my number 1 from spring 2018 to summer 2019, but I think it's once again taken my top spot. As I said, Steel Vengeance may be the objectively better ride, but I think this has some of the most mind-boggling speed, forces, and transitions of any coaster on the planet. Put all those things together and you have an easy, most intense coaster I've ridden, and from what many have said, it might be the most intense coaster in the world. Unfortunately, the most impactful words I can use to describe this ride and the sensations on the ride aren't enough. The word insane can only do so much at the end of the day, which is why I urge all of you diehard coaster fans to get out to Virginia and experience this one-of-a-kind Giga coaster. With that being said, I now conclude my top 30 roller coasters I've ridden list. I hope you all enjoyed what you saw, and if you did, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel. No one's forcing you to, but it means so much, and it gives that extra layer of motivation for me to create new content. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Bye guys.